Ambassador Zeftal's crystalline form shimmered with nervous energy as she reviewed the human's application file for the third time that morning. The document was sparse, almost insultingly so compared to the detailed psychological profiles, generational combat histories, and ceremonial preparations that other species submitted when requesting entry into the Galactic Hunting Preserve. Name: Marcus Chun. Age: 34 Terran years. Occupation: software engineer. Previous hunting experience: weekend trips with father as juvenile. Preferred weapon: whatever's available. That last line made her compound eyes flutter in what her species considered extreme anxiety. The hunting preserve wasn't some primitive backwater game park. It was the galaxy's most prestigious proving ground, where the greatest warriors from 1,000 worlds came to test themselves against the most dangerous predators ever catalogued. The entry requirements were stringent for good reason. The preserve contained creatures that had been the apex predators of their worlds before those worlds died, either through natural catastrophe or because these very creatures had consumed everything else. The Kryloth swarm queens that could control lesser minds. The void stalkers that phased between dimensions. The eternal fleshrenders that had once devoured the entire hegemony of Krix before being contained. Most applicants spent decades preparing. The Korthak warriors began their training in the egg. The crystalline Vren meditated for centuries to achieve the mental clarity needed. Even the militaristic Terran Federation's own Marines underwent years of specialized conditioning before attempting the preserve. And here was this software engineer who listed his hobbies as hiking and reading old books. "Are you certain this isn't some form of human humor?" Zeftal asked her aide, a nervous Slitheen whose scales kept changing color with stress. "I've verified the application 17 times, Ambassador. The human government has officially sponsored his entry. They've even waived the usual team entry protocol." That was another oddity. Almost every species sent hunting parties, carefully balanced teams of specialists. The Korthak sent packs of their finest warriors. The Vren formed crystal-linked communes that shared consciousness during the hunt. Even the solitary Nethers sent bonded pairs. Humans apparently sent one guy who wrote computer code. Has he at least reviewed the creature profiles, the strategic analyses, the survival protocols? He requested access to what he called the highlight reel. We provided him with a compilation of successful hunts. He watched it once, said it looked pretty straightforward, and asked if there was a gift shop. Zeftal's form darkened to a deep amber, the crystal equivalent of a migraine. In 300 years of administering the preserve, she had never encountered such casual indifference to mortal danger. "Ambassador," her aide continued hesitantly, "there's something else. The betting pools have opened." Betting pools? The major gambling syndicates across 17 sectors are taking wagers on how long the human will survive. The current over-under is 6 minutes. 6 minutes. That would barely get him past the initial containment fields. And the betting volume? Highest in preserve history. Every species in the galaxy seems to have an opinion about human durability. Zeftal reviewed the file one more time. Humans were a recent addition to galactic society, barely 50 years since first contact. They'd been cooperative, reasonably intelligent, and refreshingly free of the territorial aggression that plagued most apex species. They seemed content to trade, explore, and ask an endless stream of questions about everything. They were, by all accounts, a perfectly reasonable and thoroughly unremarkable species, which made this application all the more baffling. "Sir," the aide said, his scales now a pattern of worried orange and yellow, Should I increase the medical team on standby?" "Double it," Zeftal decided, "and have the cleanup crew ready. I have a feeling this is going to be a very short and very messy hunt." She sealed the approval on the application, hoping she wouldn't regret it. The preserve had a perfect safety record, no permanent fatalities in over 2 centuries, thanks to advanced medical intervention and resurrection technology. But there was always a first time for everything. Besides, she reasoned, at least it would be quick. Marcus Chun stepped off the transport shuttle and immediately whistled appreciatively at the orbital platform surrounding the preserve. The entire structure was a masterwork of engineering. a massive ring station that encircled a planet-sized artificial habitat. Energy fields contained dozens of different environments, from the frozen methane plains where the ice devils roamed to the plasma storms that birthed the living lightning. Impressive setup, he said to the reception committee that had gathered to meet him. Zeftal had expected terror, or at least respectful awe. The humans seemed to be treating this like a tourist attraction. Human Marcus, she began formally. Welcome to the Galactic Hunting Preserve. I am Ambassador Zeftal, Director of Operations. Before we begin, I must ask, are you certain you wish to proceed? The preserve contains over 200 species of the galaxy's most dangerous predators. Even with our safety protocols, the risk of psychological trauma, permanent scarring, or exotic disease exposure remains significant. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. I appreciate the warning. Quick question. What's the current record for most kills in a single hunt? The question caught her off guard. The record? Yeah, like, what's the high score? Who holds it? Zeftal's aide consulted his datapad. The current record is held by Warlord Krextal of the Korthak Empire. 47 confirmed kills over a period of 3 standard years. 3 years. Marcus looked genuinely surprised. It took him 3 years to kill 47 things? These are not ordinary creatures, human. Each is an apex predator from... Right, apex predators. Got it. What about the fastest completion? Like, shortest time to hit the minimum kill quota. Another consultation with the datapad. The minimum quota for preserve completion is 50 confirmed kills of threat level 5 or higher creatures. The fastest completion was achieved by the Crystal Commune of Vren, who reached quota in 11 standard months. Marcus did some quick mental math. So roughly 1 kill every week and a half. The Vren commune consisted of 43 linked consciousness entities working in perfect coordination, Zeftal said, beginning to feel defensive on behalf of the preserve's previous champions. They are considered one of the most formidable hunting forces in galactic history. Sure. Anyway, where do I sign up? The briefing that followed was the most surreal of Zeftal's career. Standard protocol required a detailed review of each threat classification, survival strategies for different environment types, and a comprehensive equipment selection process. Marcus listened politely to the first 3 threat classifications before interrupting. So level 1 through 4 don't count toward quota? Correct. Only level 5 and above. Right, so I can ignore everything under level 5. What's the most dangerous level? Level 10. But human Marcus, only 7 level 10 creatures have ever been successfully hunted, and those required massive coordinated efforts. Cool. How many level 10s are there? Currently, 14 active specimens. But, perfect. Marcus was taking notes on what appeared to be the back of a napkin. So if I focused on just the level 10s, I'd only need to kill. He did the math. About 5 of them to hit quota? The mathematics is technically correct, but human Marcus, no one has ever attempted to hunt exclusively level 10 creatures. The risk is part of the fun, right? Marcus grinned. Otherwise, why call it hunting? When they reached equipment selection, Marcus bypassed the advanced weapons displays, the powered armor showcases, and the exotic ammunition catalogs. He selected a simple kinetic rifle, basic environmental suit, and a survival pack. That's all? Zeftal asked. Well, Marcus said, considering. Maybe throw in one of those tracking devices so you can find the bodies afterward. For the record books. The tracking device is for your safety, human Marcus. So we can locate and retrieve you if needed. Oh, right, that makes sense too. As the briefing concluded, Zeftal made one final attempt to inject some gravity into the situation. Human Marcus, I want you to understand that in 300 years of operation, no being has ever achieved quota in less than 4 standard months. The creatures in the preserve are here because they are the most dangerous life forms ever encountered. They have survived the death of worlds. They have consumed armies. They exist beyond the normal understanding of life and death itself. Marcus nodded seriously. I get it. They're tough. Don't worry. I've got a plan. Might I ask what your strategy is? Simple. I'm going to hunt them like humans hunt. Before Zeftal could ask what that meant, Marcus was already heading toward the deployment bay, whistling what sounded like an ancient human war song. The deployment pod dropped Marcus into Sector 7, a temperate forest region that served as neutral ground for several different creature types. According to the briefing materials, it was considered an ideal starting area for new hunters. Plenty of level 1 to 3 creatures to practice on, good sight lines, manageable environmental hazards. Marcus ignored all of that. He'd studied the tracking data during descent and identified the nearest level 10 signature. A Kryloth swarm queen, approximately 2 kilometers northeast in the heavy canopy region. Kryloth queens were nightmares of biology and malevolent intelligence. Each one commanded thousands of drone offspring through telepathic links, could regenerate from virtually any injury, and possessed venom that could kill most species in seconds while keeping their nervous systems active to prolong the agony. The typical strategy for hunting a Kryloth queen involved months of preparation, specialized anti-psychic equipment, and teams of at least 20 coordinated hunters who would spend weeks systematically eliminating the drone swarm before attempting to engage the queen herself. Marcus decided to walk up and shoot it. The first drones found him about a kilometer out. Scouts the size of house cats with too many legs and mandibles that dripped paralytic toxins. Standard doctrine was to avoid detection for as long as possible. Marcus shot the first scout in the center of mass with his kinetic rifle. The creature exploded in a spray of chitin and ichor. The death scream echoed through the forest, immediately alerting every drone in a 5-kilometer radius. Well, Marcus said to himself, chambering another round. So much for the element of surprise. The attack came in waves. First a dozen scouts, moving in coordinated patterns through the trees. Marcus had grown up hunting deer with his father in the Michigan woods, and the basic principles were the same. Track the movement, lead the target, squeeze, don't pull the trigger. The main difference was that deer didn't actively try to kill you back. But that just made it more interesting. When the scouts reported back to the queen, she sent soldier drones, creatures the size of large dogs with natural armor and acidic saliva. Marcus fell back to a small clearing where he had better fields of fire and proceeded to methodically eliminate them. Each kill was clean, efficient, and utterly without hesitation. Within 20 minutes, he'd destroyed nearly 50 drones without taking a single injury. In the command center orbiting overhead, alarm bells were ringing. "This is impossible," Zeftal's aide was saying, staring at the tactical display. "The human's vital signs are completely normal. No elevated stress, no adrenaline spikes, no fear responses whatsoever. Perhaps the suit's sensors are malfunctioning?" Zeftal suggested hopefully. "I've run 3 diagnostics. Everything's functioning normally. He's just not afraid." On the display, Marcus was advancing steadily toward the queen's nest, leaving a trail of dead drones behind him. When he encountered the warrior drones, creatures that had previously required entire squads of Korthak Marines to bring down, he dispatched them with the same mechanical precision. "Get me a weapons analysis," Zeftal ordered. "How is a basic kinetic rifle having this kind of effect?" The analysis came back minutes later. "Ambassador, the human isn't using any special ammunition. Standard military-grade kinetic rounds. But his accuracy rate is 97%. And he's aiming for structural weak points that our database indicates shouldn't be visible to unaugmented vision. Shouldn't be. Every shot has been placed to cause maximum damage to vital organs or structural joints. He's targeting nerve clusters, respiratory systems, mobility joints. It's like he instinctively knows where these creatures are most vulnerable." Zeftal watched as Marcus reached the queen's primary nest, a massive organic structure that looked like a fusion of termite mound and alien cathedral. The queen herself emerged, a creature the size of a small aircraft, with intelligence gleaming in multifaceted eyes and telepathic attacks that could reduce most beings to catatonic terror. Marcus looked up at her, said, "Damn, you're ugly," and shot her directly in what turned out to be her primary brain cluster. The queen collapsed like a felled tree. Total elapsed time from deployment to kill, 47 minutes. In the gambling halls of 17 sectors, oddsmakers scrambled to recalculate their projections. The over-under on human survival time jumped from 6 minutes to 6 hours. It wouldn't be nearly enough. By the end of day 1, Marcus had eliminated 3 level 10 creatures, 12 level 9s, and approximately 200 lesser threats that had gotten in his way. The galactic hunting community was in chaos. Emergency sessions were being called in the hunting guild. Xenobiologists were demanding access to human psychological profiles. Military strategists were reverse engineering Marcus's tactics and finding them simultaneously brilliant and completely insane. He's using something called persistence hunting, reported Dr. Clixtal, the preserve's chief behavioral analyst. It's an ancient human hunting technique where they simply outlast their prey through superior endurance. That's impossible, Zeftal protested. The Void Stalkers can phase between dimensions. The eternal fleshrenders don't get tired. How do you persistence hunt something that exists partially outside of normal reality? He waits for them to phase back into our dimension, then shoots them. The fleshrenders can't regenerate if he destroys their core neural mass faster than they can repair it. He's not trying to outlast their bodies, Ambassador. He's outlasting their tactical patience. The tactical recordings were even more disturbing. Marcus approached each hunt like he was debugging code, methodical, logical, and utterly without emotion. When a shadow maw tried to terrorize him with illusions of his worst fears, Marcus waited for the creature to exhaust its psychic abilities, then tracked it to its den by following the residual mental energy signature. When a pack of plasma wolves tried to surround him, he used their own pack coordination against them by positioning himself so their plasma attacks would hit each other in crossfire. Most unsettling of all, he seemed to be enjoying himself. Day 2 summary, Marcus reported to his tracking device as he made camp in the ruins of an ancient Krex temple. Got the big snake thing. Turns out you can kill something that regenerates infinitely if you just keep shooting it faster than it can heal. Also bagged the glass spiders by using their own web tension against them. Tomorrow I'm thinking I'll check out that reality-warping octopus thing in Sector 12. He was referring to the Paradox Kraken, a creature that had been responsible for the deaths of over 300 elite hunters across the past century. The human appears to have no concept of appropriate fear responses, Dr. Clixtal reported to an emergency session of the Hunting Guild Council. Where other species see impossible odds and retreat to develop better strategies, he sees what he calls interesting engineering problems. Engineering problems? Yesterday he killed a dimensional shambler, a creature that attacks from higher mathematical dimensions, by what he described as exploiting the phase transition lag. He somehow calculated the precise moment when the creature would be vulnerable during dimensional shifts. How could a software engineer possibly know advanced xenobiology and multidimensional physics? We asked him. His response was, debugging is debugging. Doesn't matter if it's code or killer monsters. You find the exploit and execute. By the end of day 2, Marcus had reached 43 kills, all level 7 or higher. The betting pools had long since collapsed under the volume of wagers, and several major gambling syndicates were facing bankruptcy. More concerning for the Preserve administration was the effect on the ecosystem itself. Many of the apex predators had been carefully balanced to maintain territorial boundaries and prevent any single species from overwhelming the others. With the top-level threats being systematically eliminated, the entire food chain was starting to destabilize. We have level 3 and 4 creatures moving into territories that have been dominated by level 10s for centuries, the Ecological Monitoring Team reported. The scream moths are establishing colonies in the Void Stalker caves. The crystal parasites are spreading into the dimensional shambler hunting grounds. How is this possible? He's only been hunting for 2 days. Ambassador, the head ecologist said grimly. In 2 days, this one human has eliminated threats that have shaped the balance of power in the preserve for generations. At this rate, he'll have fundamentally altered the entire ecosystem by the end of the week. On his camp recording that night, Marcus seemed completely oblivious to ecological chaos he was creating. Day 2 wrap-up. Quotas at 43. Should hit 50 easily tomorrow. This place is pretty cool. Lots of interesting creatures. Reminds me of that nature preserve back home, except everything's trying to kill you. Same basic principles, though. You just have to understand what motivates them and exploit their behavioral patterns. He paused to clean his rifle, the same basic kinetic weapon he'd started with, now scarred from 2 days of constant use but still perfectly functional. Oh, for whoever's watching this, thanks for putting me near that Kraken thing tomorrow. I looked up the specs, and I think I know why everyone's been having trouble with it. See you in morning. In the command center, Zeftal stared at the ecological projections with growing horror. How long until he reaches quota? She asked quietly. At current pace? Sometime tomorrow afternoon. And how long until ecosystem completely collapses from disruption he's causing? Also tomorrow afternoon. Marcus woke up on day 3 feeling refreshed and optimistic. He'd gotten a solid 8 hours of sleep, the weather was perfect, and according to his tracking device, there were still 7 level 10 creatures left to choose from. He decided to start with the Paradox Kraken. The Kraken inhabited a region of spacetime that had been folded in on itself, creating a dimensional maze where normal physics didn't apply consistently. Previous hunting attempts had resulted in teams of hunters wandering the maze for months, slowly being picked off by a creature that could attack from angles that didn't technically exist. Marcus approached the spatial anomaly, studied the dimensional fluctuation patterns for about 15 minutes, then walked straight through what appeared to be solid rock and emerged directly in the Kraken's lair. The trick, he explained to his recording device, is realizing that the maze isn't actually random. It's based on the observer's expectations and fear responses. So if you just ignore the scary parts and follow the logical path. He shrugged. Basic problem solving. The Paradox Kraken itself was a magnificent horror, a creature of living mathematics that existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously, with tentacles that could reach through space-time to strangle you with your own past regrets. Marcus shot it 11 times in what he calculated were its prime number vulnerable points, collapsing its multidimensional matrix into a standard 3-dimensional corpse. Ha! He said, poking the remains with his boot. I was expecting that to be harder. By noon, he had eliminated the remaining 6 level 10 creatures through what the monitoring team could only describe as weaponized common sense. The temporal worm that devoured past and future simultaneously? Marcus shot it in the present when it was vulnerable. The living void that consumed light and hope? He used thermal imaging instead of visual targeting. The concept eater that destroyed abstract ideas? He approached it without any preconceived notions about what it was or how to fight it. Each kill was documented, verified, and added to a record that was rewriting the fundamental assumptions of galactic hunting culture. Final quota reached at 12:47 Standard Time, Marcus reported, sitting on what used to be a dread leviathan. 53 confirmed kills, all level 7 or higher. Pretty fun weekend. Is there somewhere I can get a beer around here? The Preserve's command center was in absolute chaos. Emergency ecological teams were being deployed to manage the cascading effects of removing the top-level predators. Xenobiologists were fighting over the corpses of creatures that hadn't been available for study in centuries. Military observers from every major species were demanding copies of all tactical recordings. And in the middle of it all, Ambassador Zeftal was trying to figure out how to explain to the Galactic Council that a human software engineer had just set a new record that would probably stand for millennia. The betting syndicates are requesting a formal investigation, her aide reported. They're claiming the results are impossible and demanding to know what performance enhancers the human was using. Medical scan results? Completely normal. Slight dehydration, minor muscle fatigue from hiking, and what our doctors describe as disturbingly stable psychological indicators. No combat stims, no genetic modifications, no cybernetic enhancements. He's just a completely ordinary human. That's what's terrifying, Zeftal murmured. When the extraction shuttle arrived to collect Marcus, he was sitting by a small campfire, cooking what appeared to be meat from one of his kills over an improvised grill. Everything okay? The pilot asked, staring at the scorched landscape that used to be one of the most dangerous regions in the galaxy. Oh yeah, great weekend, Marcus replied, packing up his gear. Really helped me unwind after that project crunch at work. You know how it is. Sometimes you just need to get away from the computer screen and do something with your hands. The pilot looked around at the ecological devastation, the scattered remains of legendary apex predators, and the smoldering craters where reality-warping creatures had made their last stands. "Right," he said weakly. "Very relaxing." On the flight back to the orbital platform, Marcus reviewed his weekend accomplishments with the satisfaction of someone who'd just completed a particularly challenging crossword puzzle. 53 kills in approximately 62 hours, including travel time. A new galactic record that would probably inspire academic papers for decades. More importantly, he'd answered a question that had been nagging him since the initial briefing. Humans weren't particularly special in terms of strength, speed, intelligence, or technology compared to other galactic species. But they had one advantage that seemed to be unique in the galaxy. They had spent their entire evolutionary history as persistence predators on a world full of things that could kill them. Every other species had evolved to be afraid of something. Humans had evolved to be afraid of nothing they could eventually figure out how to kill, which, as it turned out, was pretty much everything. "Ambassador," Marcus said as they prepared to dock. "Thanks for setting this up. I had a really great time. Do you guys do this regularly? Like, maybe quarterly?" Zeftal's crystalline form shimmered with what her species would recognize as absolute existential horror. "I will be in touch," she managed. As the shuttle docked and Marcus disembarked, whistling the same tune he'd been humming when he arrived, betting establishments across the galaxy quietly began taking odds on a new question. How long before the humans decided that other species might be interesting to hunt? The smart money was on not long enough. 3 months later, the Galactic Hunting Preserve reopened with new safety protocols, a completely rebalanced ecosystem, and a waiting list of human applicants that stretched for light years. Marcus Chun returned to his job as a software engineer, where he spent his days debugging code and his evenings planning his next hunting trip. And somewhere in the deep vaults of the Galactic Council, xenobiologists worked frantically to understand exactly what humanity's entry into the galactic community really meant for the rest of the universe. The answer they were beginning to suspect was nothing good. For anyone else, anyway.